right. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burnin' Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Happy Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. Got pretty warm here. Not terrible, but it's going to be hot this next week. It sure sounds like so. That'll be delightful and stuff. But anyhow, it's summer. That's what it's supposed to do, right? It's supposed to be balls hot in the summer because that's the time of year for it to be balls hot. So, yeah, happy July. Anyway, I hope you're all surviving everything and doing good. You know, it's a weird fucking time we're living in. I've been kind of on a search for different shows to like different ideas for shows to talk about that aren't so goddamn depressing. But man, the world just gets weirder and weirder, and there's just a lot of shit that happens. You know, like and you know, we live in this like fast paced news, you know, news all the time type deal, and it's just crazy. I don't know. It's something like I've never experienced before, but we have a vote coming up here pretty soon. I think I'll have to you have to check with McKinsey to see, but that cattle price Discovery and Transparency Act is getting ready to be voted on, and I don't know what to think about that bill. I think like all in all, I think it's meant with good intentions, and I think they, for the most part, it's a pretty good bill on paper, but it's also the government, and so then I got to looking into some of like the New Deal stuff, which was really has led us to, I mean, like, my word, the New Deal shit and how much that expanded the reach of the federal government, and also with great intentions on a lot of the programs that, I mean, it didn't actually help pull us out of the depression, but it like gave people a job and a source of income. So, well, I mean, there's bridges all over the Great Plains that are still used today, that were built in the Dust Bowl, but there's some that are just like kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, where's that bridge going to? It doesn't even look like there's a creek there. Well, there probably wasn't, but it was you know, you had to build a bridge to you know, meet a quota for the federal government, and people got paid. So I mean, they went and built a bridge, and did it make sense? No, but I guess everybody had a job, and then I don't know, but there's a lot of those programs that went in place during the New Deal that led to the subsidized farming that we see today, and now, like, even more than the subsidized, but now it's like insurance farming, but it's all subsidized, and or the dairy industry where it just you're 100% incentivized to just pump as much milk as you can out, and not really worry about quality. And then you look in the beef side of things, and how we've greatly increased our herd quality to not only to produce, like, you know, high yielding and high marbling you know, beef at the back end, but also through the genetics of just like you know, confirmation, disposition, and all the stuff that we now kind of enjoy in the modern cattle world, like and you just like there's been so many like big jumps in technology and innovation and just scientific discovery, I guess, more on the genetic side, that has come up from I guess like vertical integration and like the industrialization of the packing industry, but it's also boxed us into a corner where like you look at any sale barn in the country, and you run an identical set of calves through one set red and one set black, and the black will bring more every single time, and that's it's a direct result of the kind of the Packers being able to set the tone for everything else and game the market and game the rules to like set everything up in their favor. And I'm not even talking shit on them on this point, because it's pretty impressive. So anyway, I'm calling this episode Strange Bedfellows because I've thought about this deal, and I don't have a really good answer. But what I do know is there's some sort of opportunity, and I don't know what it is. I don't have any good solution. I'm just saying that there's some way for the ranchers and to get back at the Packers by somehow targeting the labor market of the Packers, which is typically incredibly poor, typically immigrant, and most of the time don't speak English. So that there's a big hurdle to cross to connect with those. But I think there's something there, and so that got me looking back at the organized labor movement and how big of an impact it had on the U.S. and the world in general. And it's spurred the growth of socialism and communism and led to the Bolshevik Revolution, and it still impacts our lives every day. So, and most of it, and not in a good way. But also, you look back at some of the stories of those old, the early days of the American labor movement, and you can't help but be on the side of the workers that were striking. So, there's a fine balance to be had, and I'll try to discuss that going forward. But anyhow, I look at all of this, and I look at we're just at such a peak moment of polarity. I don't think that we're nearly as divided now as we were back in, say, Civil War. I don't know if we're that far from it, but I don't think we've hit that peak yet. But in our lifetimes, and I'll say if you're under the age of, say, 50, in our lifetimes, we haven't seen people quite so polarized. It was comparable a little bit during the Iraq war deal, but not like this. And you see all these things with the Supreme Court stepping in, the Roe v. Wade thing, and I was looking at the docket, what they got coming up, and I don't know much about, but there's talk about. There was also Michael Malice, a guy that I mentioned several times. Go follow him on Twitter. He's a great follow. But he mentioned a case that might be brought up, and I was like, I've never heard of that. It was Hinckley versus, here we go. I got it pulled up. Wickard versus Filburn. And basically, that was a case during the whole New Deal era where a guy in Ohio grew more wheat than he was allowed to. So with all the price controls and shit that came down, and then the quotas, you were only allotted, like they basically gave you wheat tags, like you would the deer tag. It's like this is your allotment of wheat that you're allowed to grow this year, and anything over than that, they fine you for it. And so he grew a little bit more, and he eventually sued and went all the way to the Supreme Court. And he sued on the grounds that the interstate commerce law did not apply because he was not selling it interstate. And then the Supreme Court disagreed with him. And but essentially, that whole case was to challenge the constitutionality of all the farm subsidy deals. And also remember, this was in the time of court packing. So like very, very similar today, where that has been thrown around, particularly with Democrats in power at the moment. But that's exactly what FDR did, because although you hear about the New Deal being, kind of helped save America when you learn about it in school, they don't tell you that it was very unpopular at the time too. And it was everyone and it was just like all these alphabet agencies that we know about today that all started under Roosevelt during the Great Depression, and almost every one of them was challenged in courts. So like they, instead of like after they got beaten the courts a couple different times, well, what they do, they just he used the bully pulpit, pushed the Democrats to expand the Supreme Court, and they just confirmed a whole bunch of Supreme Court justices that sided with them, kind of like what Trump did with Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett. He didn't expand the court, but let's face it, he pushed through Republican judges, and I'm happy for that. I don't know necessarily like the process of it, but I am really glad. I'm really excited by the Roe versus Wade ruling, and it has nothing to do with abortion. I'm just so I'm really, really encouraged the fact that shit that is not mentioned in the Constitution is getting struck down at the Supreme Court level. I really don't give two shits about abortion. It doesn't affect me. I have like my own personal opinion, but they're not that strong about it because it doesn't fucking affect me. And should it ever somehow affect me, say with my kids or somebody that I know, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. But I just don't give two shits about abortion. And but the fact that they're tossing it back to the states is fucking awesome, and the fact that they're doing that on the grounds that it was not mentioned in the Constitution, and basically that at the time the previous ruling was the Supreme Court just saying, well, now this is law. And also they left the case open. Like, if you want to challenge these abortion laws on the right to privacy, that's still open. They left that road wide open. And I think that's probably the best case that somebody could make, and to put a final stamp in this Roe versus Wade thing is well, you don't have if a woman has the right to privacy, then her medical decisions between her and her doctor, even though that may include a child. I don't know, and I don't know how that would rule out, but they left that up, and the fact that they're just throwing it back to the courts or to the states, and then allowing for further challenges like that's how it's supposed to work, and it seems like a good thing. So, but that being said, now some of these conservative states. They already tried it in Louisiana. I think it got shot down where they were going to charge the mother of the aborted child with homicide, which seems a little shitty. I mean, like real shitty. I don't know what it. I guess regardless of your view on abortion, that seems real shitty to, like the person, aside from the kid who gets killed, the person that kind of suffers the most is the woman. Then you go ahead and, on top of all that suffering, you go ahead and throw her in prison. That seems real shitty. So, but regardless, there's going to be some of those states like Oklahoma, looking at you, that's probably going to be one, and that are going to go with that. And that should get challenged at the Supreme Court. And but then it's going to lead to like enforcement. Like they've already talked about this deal with enforcement. They're trying to bring Kristi Noem in, and I like whatever, but it all like goes back to like the fugitive slave laws. And so like the northern states, even though it was in law that they had to return the slaves and prosecute anybody that helped them, they just didn't enforce it. So that seems like how it's going to be. And I don't know. So going off on a tangent, this Wickard versus Filburn, this would be another case where, like, if it gets revisited, and I don't know how likely this is to happen, or if it's just like a libertarian pipe dream, but it's very relevant to a lot of the folks that most of the folks that listen here. Right around 600 people, I found out. Going off the average, so that's kind of wild. On an average, that's what the estimated audience size, somewhere between like 550 and 650. So right about 600 people. So anyhow, I don't know where I was headed with that, but anyhow, so I thought it was So of the 600 or so people that listen, probably 80% of you guys are involved directly in agriculture. So I thought, he mentioned this case. I went and looked it up, and I was like, oh, well, now that's really interesting, because should that get challenged and it go the same ruling as kind of precedent as the Roe v. Wade thing, then boy, that would really, really shake up the agriculture industry. But anyhow, we looked through all these things, and one of the big struggles throughout American history is, and I guess throughout just history in general, it's the class struggle, and it's like the people that have the money and the wealth that to produce stuff, and then the people that need to produce that to make that stuff work. So whether it's peasant, serf, and and the ruler, or owner, slave, or the owner and the worker, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. It's the tale as old as time. And one of the reasons that makes like Marxism, socialism so compelling is because you understand why they're bitching, or at least like in the true like Marxism, socialist movement, the organized labor movement. When you're looking at the company towns of West Virginia, where a mining company would come in, and it's the same way with like the railroads too. Like the mining company would come in and they would buy up all this land to mine the coal, but then they would build a little town to accommodate all these workers, which were usually just poor immigrants, like dirt poor, coming from the poorest parts of Europe, like barely alive. And then they go to the hollers of West Virginia, and they get put up in this little clapboard house that they charge way too much money for. But what else do these guys have? They came over off the boat, and that was kind of their deal. They ended up in West Virginia, and then there's no way to get out. It's out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and nothing's close. They got one store. The post office is in the store, and that store has your groceries, all your mining equipment, all your day-to-day stuff that you might need at way marked up prices. But guess what? They accept scrip, which is the piece of paper that the mining company gives you as your payment, and instead of real money. And the only place that scrip is accepted is at the company store. Oh, and also, like, you pay rent on that clapboard house, and you can't leave the town until you pay off that debt. So you're just stuck in this mining town forever, and it's a dangerous job. And the mine's working on make as much profit as possible and be as efficient as possible. All that good shit. All the classic complaints about capitalism, and they're not without merit. If you look throughout the ages, I mean, that it's 100% true. When people are just let to their own devices, more often than not, it turns out okay. But then you get in the age of the robber barons, as they call it, and while they were absolutely horrific to some of their workers, they also helped spur like the biggest growth in personal wealth in human history. But there was a big toll. It came at a real high price, and some of the workers, most of the workers suffered. But like just the stories about them was awful, and the meatpacking industry really got put in the limelight with The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, who was an avowed socialist. And the theme of that entire book was stated there in the last paragraph, where it says socialism will save America. He turns out he was wrong. He didn't know it at the time, and it's been wrong several times since. But the stuff that he brought about, helped clean up the packing industry, and it brought forth regulations, which in and of itself are not a bad thing. It's just the fact that it's the consequences after the fact. But from that has birthed one of the best food production systems on earth. It's still awful sketchy at times, but I trust our food supply system for the most part. That shit weakens every day. But anyhow, when you look at some of the conditions that that all just comes from putting just pure efficiency and profit over above everything. And that's kind of the complaint of most Marxist, socialist, union type people. What they get wrong is that, every time you put a regulation on, and they think we should all share equally. That sounds really nice, and until you realize that you're dealing with people, and people don't operate that way, and so that's why socialism will never work either. But that's why also pure unadulterated capitalism doesn't work either, because while monopolies don't tend to last, when they are in place, they tend to wreak havoc. And more often you see that these different industries and companies get in bed with the government to allow a monopoly, and you get some really, really nasty shit out of it. Look at Nazi Germany with they were socialists, but they weren't full born government seizes owns of or the means of production. They did, but they they didn't seize your means of production, but they damn sure had a big influence on how you used your means of production. And when you're doing something like that, where it's just like, hey, we're gonna dump a bunch of money into research, how you get there, we don't really care. And oh, by the way, we don't really like this group of people, so have fun. Well, then you get some really outstanding like medical and scientific advancements, but when you're looking at slave labor and like just forced experiments on a bunch of Jewish people just simply because they were Jewish, that's not ideal. It's so and you can look at that where that company, did they have a lot of choice? Probably not much, but boy, did they reap the benefit of it, and they kind of went along with it. They were pretty willing participants, and so when you have that type of a relationship between industry and government, that is really not ideal, and that's usually where, more than anything, that's where like the unions came into play, is when the industry got so far in bed with the government that they were shutting down dissent. Like if you look at the Ludlow massacre in Colorado, that was it was a union miner strike. I believe it was a coal mine there in Ludlow. Jason Boland has a great song. Maybe I'll put that as. I don't know if I did I know I've researched Ludlow quite a bit. I don't know if I've ever finished that episode or not. I'll have to look back. But anyhow, I'll use that song for this episode. But it was a worker strike, and the mining company leaned on the governor of Colorado, and he sent the National Guard in to put it down, and like 20-something people got killed. That happened all over near Pittsburgh and West Virginia, in that that coal region, and then quite a little bit in Chicago and where all the meatpacking towns were back in the day. It just there's something about and organized labor is a very, very powerful political tool, and that's ask the Democrats. That's why they continue to cater to unions, and I understand why the Republicans and those on kind of the conservative side tend to steer away from unions because of the Marxist influences and beginnings. However, like there's something powerful about collective bargaining and people standing up and saying no, like we're not going to be pushed around. So like there's a very delicate balance to be had there, and that's what leads me to this the strange bedfellows. So you have Tyson, you have JBS, National Beef, and Cargill, controlling roughly 85% of the fat cattle kill in the U.S. So 85% of your beef production comes through one of those four major corporations. Back during the Upton Sinclair days, in the trust busting, and I guess it was Teddy Roosevelt that got it pushed through. Back then it was 5 packers and they controlled 80%. Now it's 4. It's even more concentrated now than it was before. And when you look on the other thing, like it's not following quite the same timeline, but I was talking to my nephew back home and seeing how many people are pulling their ground out of CRP and plowing it back up, and it's not raining, and now you got like dust blowing, like you got standing dust, just sand in grassland because the dirt's the topsoil is just blowing. That's another topic, but so now you have a a beef processing industry that's even more concentrated than it was back in the trust busting days. And you have a really bad drought going on, really bad. You all know that, but for everybody that's not in agriculture, you're really going to start feeling these food prices. Like the Ukraine deal is a big deal, but the drought here is a really, really big deal. The water situation is a huge issue, and we are approaching like levels of drought that we haven't seen, or we saw them back in the height of the drought was like 2012, 2013, or the tail end of it. And then before that, the 50s, and before that, the 30s. But like we're kind of right in that same area now. And we got farmers or ranchers going out of business. We got like cow slaughters way up, and and you're not getting shit for them. And it's a tough deal, and so now we got this bill, which if you aren't aware of it, you can go back and listen. We did a really good interview with Corbett Wall about this whole deal, and they were kind of softball questions, but I wanted to get the pitch out there because it seems like it was a big deal to a lot of people. So I wanted to get like the full pitch. And some questions that I thought would, and so you can go look at that. Me and Aaron did that with Corbett Wall. It's a couple months ago. But what we got this bill, which is essentially trying to get us back to the enforcement of the Packers and Stockyard Act, which hasn't been really enforced since like the 60s, 70s. With what was that? The Mises Institute had a really good, really good article on it. So it's I'll share it. I'll pop it up here, but it's called "How the Feds Broke the Meat Industry," and it's a really good article. Highly recommend you read it, but that was the Wholesome Meat Act of 1967 mandates meat must be slaughtered and processed at a federally inspected slaughterhouse or in a facility inspected in a state with meat inspection laws at least as strict as federal requirements. Small processors found it difficult, if not impossible, to meet the federal requirements. The cost was simply too high. Of course, large corporations can bear regulatory costs. As a result, meat processing industry went through a massive consolidation after the enaction of this act. Since the passage of the Wholesome Meat Act, the number of slaughterhouses has dropped from more than 10,000 back then, so 1967, to 2,766 in 2019. And you might be able to bump that up to 2,800 if you're real lucky, but I don't think, we haven't got that many more. So, and instead of hundreds of companies processing meat, 3 corporations control, and so 4 basically in that one. So, and it's just, I don't know. There's a really good book on the vertical integration of the packing industry. It's called The Meat Racket. I forget who wrote it, but it's about the Tyson family and how they went from being just like basically a trucking company to what Tyson is now. And it's really like a true like American entrepreneurial type story. Like you're like, I don't know, it's hard to hate on it. and until you look around and see this, like how they changed everything and what the industry is now, and it's like permeated the culture. I don't know if it was just so much John, the Tyson, there was just like one, I guess like one snake on the Hydra, but it was, the big commercialization and like go big or go home. And that led to like just watered down quality, and then to like tying back into the labor movement with the growth of labor unions and stuff of that. It led to like just a bloat of the American manufacturing industry, where like the unions, rather than pushing for better work conditions and better overall pay and whatnot, it tended to get more political, and they shielded their shitty workers, and they just pushed more towards these Democratic type candidates that were hand in hand with the corporations that these unions were supposed to stand against, and eventually led to these like NAFTA and these big trade deals that outsourced almost all of our manufacturing overseas. One thing about food is you can't really outsource all of it, so you still got to be able to produce enough food to get by, but we can do that. But we built a huge export market, which is a good thing to an extent. But when we're exporting like really high dollar beef, and at the same time we're bringing in lower quality beef to mix here domestically. I mean, it's the whole thing is really kind of fucked. And these big global corporations have had a huge hand into that, and in conjunction with the government, and also with the labor unions getting corrupted, and I don't know. And a lot of these packing plants nowadays are in states where they're not unionized. You have some back in like Iowa and Wisconsin, Michigan, up there in the Midwest, but once you get I don't know about Nebraska. I know Omaha's a little. They got a little more of the like traditional, urban industrial labor there. But the rest of Nebraska's very rural. Kansas, Texas, Colorado. Those are all right to work states. So the unions are almost like a no presence at all. Not to say that's a bad thing, but what they've been able to do, these packing companies, by moving to these states with decreased, organized labor presence, they've been able to import a bunch of really low, I say low quality, meaning that they have very, very little skill for the most part. The Muslims are a little different deal because they they do that halal kill, and I think a lot of them are actually very very skillful in what they do. But whether it be from Mexico, Honduras, or say Vietnam or Somalia or whatever, most of these workers that they bring over, and then you can go to any packing town in the beef belt, whether it be Amarillo or Dodge City or Fort Morgan, Garden City. I'm sure Grand Island, Nebraska is the same way. It's just a hodgepodge of these like third world immigrants that they all work at these big packing plants, and they're running 5,000 to 7,000 head a day, and it's impressive to see it. And overall, they do a pretty good job of putting out a good product, but with the increased volume and they want you to be efficient. Well, sometimes humans just ain't that efficient, and shit happens, and the working conditions aren't great. And because it's a right to work state, meaning they can't compel you to pay union dues if they vote to become a union facility. They can't compel you to pay union dues like they do in those other states. So like the union is just not a big deal, but it makes me wonder, like, if it could be, and it would be very strange bedfellows. The independent American rancher teaming up with the labor unions to kind of bring these packing giants in, at the very least, like, get their attention. And I know, like I said, I've got my issues with organized labor, but I recognize it as a very, very powerful source of political sway. Like their organized labor is a huge chip. Just ask Donald Trump when he won the Rust Belt in 2016. Those are heavy union type people, like blue collar, typically Democrat. Those are people that voted twice for Obama, but they're very much folks like the rest of us in the ag industry, where they work hard for a living. And you give them shit about their union jobs, but it's still like that factory work sucks. I can tell you from the processing plant side of things, the kill plant, that's not a fun job. If I didn't know I was going to leave at the end of the summer, I would have never made it past a week at that Tyson plant. It was BPI, but it was attached to the Tyson plant, and that's a shitty existence. 12-hour shifts. There's no sunlight. You get sunlight when you go on your lunch break and your 2 union breaks. Even though it's not a union facility, they still kind of somewhat abide by union rules to kind of so people don't raise too much of a fuss. But when you get to looking at a union position versus a non-union position, like, yeah, it's a significant deal. And so you would understand why people wouldn't mind paying union dues if they can. You pay a little bit of your check every month, and you get a huge increase in pay and benefits, and just it's a way better deal. It's a pretty sweet gig. So I don't fault anybody for going in on that union deal, but also at the same time it leads to, like I said, like what we've had, where it increases the price of the products that you're producing, because you got to pay your people more, you gotta provide more benefits and all that, and it just eventually it becomes cheaper for people to build factories elsewhere and not pay the high labor costs, and that has directly led us to where we're at now. The ag industry, like I said, is a little different deal, but we're at a point where even if this price discovery bill gets passed through, gets implemented like it's supposed to, you're still dealing with 4 major corporations controlling 85% of the industry, and there's an argument to break them up, and sometimes that argument looks more appealing than other days, but also you have to look at, like, what's that going to cost? How much are willing to let the government seep into the way we do things, and before you know it, we end up like the dairy industry or the any other industry that just gets way over-regulated and has no say in how they do things. And we're rapidly approaching there. And I still don't see a big way, because I don't see these ranchers huge portion of them, I don't see them marketing their cattle in a different way. They're just they sell them how they sell them, whether it be straight through the sale barn, at a production sale, or you're doing the video auction. Either way, like they know some of them forward contract, but it's you're not a lot of people are going to change how they do things, which doesn't bode well for the cattle business, because there's going to have to be a big change in the way things get done. And that includes marketing of your cattle, but that might be a bridge you have to cross some other time. In the meantime, you've got a bunch of non-unionized workers who really went through the ringer during this COVID shit. Like, if you've never been on a processing floor, I've never really been on the kill floor, so I'm sure that can get hot during the summer. But on the processing floor itself, it's cold. Like, you try to keep it about 45 degrees or lower. I forget exactly what what the regulations were for. I was a quality assurance intern, and I believe it had to stay under 45 degrees before it would set off any alarms. But it's 104 degrees outside, and and it's 45 inside, and you're just in that all day, and it's kind of damp, wet, cold, no sunlight, and it's the perfect place for a virus to just really take hold and do well. And so you had a bunch of plant shutdowns, and don't get me wrong, I think these the management of these plants milked that for all it was worth to squeeze every little bit of a profit they could. But I think there was a lot of legit plant shutdowns, just because you're stuffed in there really. It's very assembly line type deal, and so you're in close contact, and you're in an environment that is just ideal to spread a virus. And so a lot of those plant closures were legit. And you saw like in Iowa and stuff, like they were threatening to strike. You didn't see that in any of your major beef belt type plants in Nebraska and Kansas and Texas and Oklahoma. Like I didn't see any of that, and I wonder if there is some angle to be had there. I'm just speculating because I don't have any ideas, and I know the danger. Like you don't really want to cozy too far up with the unions, because they still have a strong Democratic presence. But at the same time, your average union worker is probably just trying to make a living. And it kind of reminds me of like the World War II, and when we teamed up with Stalin to beat Hitler. We didn't like him, but it was kind of necessary at the time, I guess. And I guess if depends on how libertarian you are, you can debate that one as well as the necessity. But regardless, like that was a good example of strange bedfellows coming together to defeat a common enemy. And I think that may be something that we have to take a look at. Somehow organizing with basically a bunch of Mexican guys, a bunch of Somalians, and a bunch of Vietnamese, depending on which plant you're looking at, which packing town you're looking at. But I would say we probably got more in common with your average line worker than you do management or just the people that are running that. Like it can be chalked up to greed pretty easily, but also at the same time they're running a multinational corporation, so like they're not worried about so much about a labor problem in Kansas. They're not worried so much about the health standards. They're worrying about opening another plant in Brazil or China or wherever the fuck else, and so this is kind of small potatoes for them. And that's the problem you run into as a company gets bigger. And the more people that work for it, just like the more disconnected it gets. And so I wonder, and I don't even know the approach to it, but like it seems like there's something there, because the power of organized labor cannot be denied. I mean, it's when they look at Canada too with that trucker strike. I mean, they really brought shit to a standstill. And the airlines right now, they're not mentioning it a whole lot, but the whole vaccine mandate was never really lifted for these the airlines. I don't think, and so there's a lot of pilots that could fly that aren't getting hired because of that vaccine deal. And so like you're seeing rumblings of all this labor unrest, and it's a very powerful thing. Like if you've ever spent any time delayed in the airport, yeah, I mean, it can fuck your life up pretty quick. And so there's something there. How you harness that, how we do that, I don't know. I'm open to debate. Anybody's got any great ideas, I'd love to hear them. Not that we're going to do anything, but I like the idea of it anyways. And I don't know, when you look back through the history of the labor movement, it's I'm still not much of a union guy, but it's hard not to respect the getting how we got to our cushy lives here. It's just another case of like some really hard people getting pushed to the brink and saying that's enough. And we don't typically look at union leaders like that quite so much anymore. But back in the day, like they were very kind of righteous type people that they're just like they stood up for what was right. And it's gonna take something like that. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how you harness that. I don't know how you organize it, but that may be our best bet, because when you look at the politicians that are supposed to represent the rural folks, they're all in bed with the giant ag corporations, and they talk a good game, like they're gonna stand up for you, but in the end they don't. And so I'm not sure what other ally we really have at this point. So it's something to think about. Anyhow, that's my ramblings of a madman here. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great week. I think Aaron will be back here Tuesday night we'll be live Tuesday night, and then be out for regular consumption on Wednesday for Fence Post Politics, and we'll see what we got on Thursday. I'll try to get some good ones lined up, but make sure you go check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Burnin Daylight, or you can sign up on Spotify. It's $4.99 a month, and also go check out all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, telegram.com or org or net or whatever, telegram.whatever/move your ass. Go check that out. Follow, like, subscribe, share it. And thanks again for listening, folks. I appreciate it. Now, move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Well, life is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But When you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.